On the night of July 9th, 1997, a young woman, Kathleen Crowell Webb, was walking home from work. Everything was normal until suddenly, she says, two men forced her into the back seat of a car. There she was sexually abused along with one of the men using a broken bottle to write words on her stomach. She was then pushed out of the car onto the street where police eventually found her. One of the alleged kidnappers would be found and sentenced 25 to 50 years in prison. But what if Kathleen had fabricated the story? What if she sent an innocent man to prison? As a result of breakthroughs in forensics, Gary Dotson broke barriers by becoming the first person in the United States to be exonerated via DNA evidence on August 14, 1989. His trial would be one of the most influential court cases in forensic science and would later contribute to forensics being used to release those who were wrongly convicted. The year was 1964. In the suburbs of Worth, Illinois, there was a house that held a young girl by the name of Kathleen Crowell Webb. Kathleen, born on June 26, 1961, was raised in a dysfunctional environment. Her father, Donald Crowell, frequently engaging in fights with her mother, Georgianne Crowell. These would eventually lead to their decision to separate when Kathleen was 4. After the divorce, Donald would drop Kathleen off with an elderly woman by the name of Nellie Landers for dinner. After she had eaten, Kathleen looked for her father, but he was gone. As Kathleen grew up under Nellie's care, she enforced strict rules onto her at a young age, scolding her for minor inconveniences. She would later prevent Kathleen from contacting her family, though she would allow her father to show up on occasions. Kathleen began to despise Nellie, ultimately trying to poison her at one point. She also attempted to end her life on one occasion by overdosing. At the age of 10, she began smoking, and at the age of 12, Kathleen became sexually active, stating it was the closest she'd ever been to tender touching since she was 4 years old.
When Nellie Landers grew increasingly ill, she was placed under the care of another family, the Smiths. As a result, Kathleen would only see Nellie on the weekends to take care of her. The Smiths were less controlling and often let Kathleen do what she wished. There was one rule they enforced. If they caught Kathleen having sexual activity, she would be thrown out. Despite this, Kathleen continued being sexually active at the age of 16 and ran across David Byrne. David was a classmate she was familiar with since they had been sexually active with each other throughout the months. One night, David snuck into Nellie's house with the help of Kathleen and engaged in sexual activity with her. Once David had left, Kathleen realized David could have impregnated her. She grew increasingly paranoid, coming to terms with the consequences she faced. But what if she could cover it up?
On July 9, 1977, Kathleen Webb started the day normally, leaving Nellie's house for her job at Long John Silver's. Once she had finished her shift, she began walking home, thinking of a way to cover up her pregnancy. After a while, she decided to hide behind a bush in a nearby park. Once she had fully hidden herself, she began scratching her body, tearing her clothes, and causing several minor injuries to herself. She knew what she was going to do. She was going to sneak home and tell her parents that she had been a victim of a brutal attack and had been sexually assaulted. After tearing her clothes, Webb started on her way home when she was found by a police car. Authorities took her in and confronted Webb. She told of a ruthless and unforgiving act took upon her, with such great detail it had to be true. She exclaimed that a car had driven in circles around a light post, with them chasing after her. She made an attempt to escape. 2 men then dragged her into the car and sexually assaulted her, as well as causing many different injuries to her, mainly scratching wounds on her stomach. After the investigation, one man of the so-called 2 individuals would be found based on Kathleen's description of the attackers and a DNA sample of her undergarments that night. That man would be Gary Dotson, who would soon be sentenced 25 to 50 years in prison for a crime he did not commit. However, this would spark controversy in the Cook County community and the public. Warren Lupel believes that Gary Dotson is innocent and should be freed based off an abundance of information. He exclaims that Gary Dotson's sentence should be shortened based off several circumstances.
That he is not a danger to the community, that he has never committed a crime of any substance prior to being convicted for this crime, that he has already served approximately 2 years longer than any other person similarly situated has ever served, and on that basis the sentence ought to be commuted to time served.
Throughout 6 years of Gary Dotson's sentence, Kathleen felt great remorse for her actions in 1979. Her guilty conscience ruled her life until she couldn't take it anymore. On March 7th of 1985, Kathleen gathered the courage to admit her actions to her friend Bonnie Nanini. Afterward, Bonnie told the pastor of the church, who contacted John McClario, a Christian attorney in Menominee Falls, Wisconsin. John had Kathleen write a letter describing the case and her reason to reveal her actions, and took the case. John later brought the case to the media on March 22nd. He made inquiries in Illinois, causing the case to be reopened. On April 4th, 1985, Kathleen, her husband David Webb, and John traveled to Cook County, Illinois to attend a hearing at the Markham Court building. While there, Kathleen told her story to be cross-examined. The hearing was led by Judge Richard Samuels, who would either accept or deny Gary Dotson's petition. They were called back to the courtroom on April 11th, where Judge Samuels denied Gary Dotson's petition. Despite Kathleen stating that the rape was fabricated, he still found the lie more believable than what truly happened. As they left the building, cameras caught Kathleen wailing,
"I have told the truth. I lied in 1979, and I'm telling the truth now, and that man is innocent."
All hope seemed to be lost until May of that same year. A clemency hearing was held by the Illinois Prisoner Review Board. These allow inmates to petition to the highest authority to restore certain rights or commute their sentences to their time served. At the hearing, Warren Lupel claimed that there were 11 errors in the 1979 trial. These errors ranged from insignificant evidence to improper prosecutorial conduct. On the 12th of May, 1985, the governor of Illinois commuted Dotson's sentence to 6 years, which he had already served, freeing Dotson. However, he was still a convicted felon. Later that year, a defense attorney, Thomas Breen, agreed to take Dotson's case. Breen believed that new DNA testing in England would finally prove Dotson innocent. Dotson's attorney would later be proved right, as on August 15, 1988, a forensic serologist announced that the incident had nothing to do with Dotson, yet positively included Webb's former boyfriend. The results were later backed up by the Illinois State Police Crime Laboratory. Despite this evidence, the prosecution wouldn't admit error in the case for over a year.
After serving 10 years in prison, Gary Dotson was proven innocent from his alleged crimes on August 14, 1989, due to flawed forensics in his case. This included flaws in serology and hair analysis, thus making him the first person to be ever proven innocent using DNA evidence. After years of countless efforts faced with harsh decisions from the prosecution, Gary Dotson was let free. As of Kathleen, she would earn $17,500 from her ghostwritten book, Forgive Me. She would end up giving the earnings to Dotson as an apology. Kathleen would disappear from the media for years until May 15, 2008, where she sadly passed away of cancer at age 46. In the end, this court case would lead to forensics playing a major role in the court system today. Gary Dotson's case would also contribute to the creation of the Innocence Project, which focuses on freeing the wrongly convicted. Out of 377 exonerations, the Innocence Project has been involved with 198 cases. However, Dotson's trial is one of hundreds of wrongly convicted trials that was exonerated. Today it has become easier to be exonerated due to the expansion of forensics. Because of Gary Dotson's trial and his face-off with authorities, his trial paved the way for the wrongly convicted suspects to prove they are innocent.
I'd like to say to Mrs. Dotson that I'm so sorry for what I did to you and your family, and especially to Gary and his name and his life, and how I took 6 years away from him. And I really want your forgiveness, especially Gary's forgiveness.
You're forgiven, Kathy. I just want my son back, and I thank you so much.
Women get shocked over these things, and I accepted it as that there, and she made a mistake.
Or don't make all these other suggestions to me. Show me. He has the right to a pardon based upon innocence. I urge you to give it to him.